I would say two things. The first thing is gold nor silver can bankrupt in a world that is extremely overlevered and in the process of bankrupting. And the second thing I would say is please read or watch The Great Taking, because that's what this game is on. That's what the end game is in the financial markets, is the Great Taking. Those laws are on the books all over the world. The ink is completely dry. These laws started to be put on the books in 2014. They are completed everywhere around the world, and the population is going to be completely fleeced.
We are standing on the edge of a financial reckoning, one so massive it threatens to erase everything we thought we owned. Across the globe, governments and central banks are drowning in debt, and the illusion of safety that fiat currencies once offered is crumbling fast. The endgame isn't some distant possibility. It's already in motion, and the rules have quietly been rewritten to ensure that when the collapse hits, you won't be holding any real wealth. In this video, we hear from renowned financial analyst and precious metals expert Bill Holter. According to Holter, the global financial system is not just faltering, it's being restructured in real time. And central to this restructuring is a covert legal framework known as the Great Taking, a set of post-2008 laws that allow the confiscation of your financial assets under the guise of systemic stability. These laws aren't being debated, they're already in place, worldwide. Holter makes it clear, in a world that is wildly over-leveraged and spiraling toward bankruptcy, only gold and silver remain outside the reach of financial collapse. They cannot default. They don't rely on counterparties. They don't need trust. Unlike your bank deposits, brokerage accounts, or retirement funds, they cannot be taken under the new legal architecture. And that, he says, is why owning physical metal isn't just wise, it's essential for survival. This is not fear-mongering. It is a hard truth echoed by financial insiders and obscured by mainstream silence. If you're not preparing now, you may already be too late. Let's hear from Bill Holter on why gold and silver are your only real protection in the endgame, and what you need to do immediately to stay ahead of what's coming. Before we dive in, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. This could be the most important video you watch this year, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. We appreciate the support and hope you enjoy the video.
There's two ways to look at it here. First, the states are beginning to make laws making gold and silver legal tender. But notice they're not saying U.S. mint lineage coin. They're saying gold and silver. So that's for the states. The original reason behind recommending U.S. mint lineage coin is because it would be very, very difficult for the government to confiscate gold or confiscate silver and include eagles, buffaloes, any type of U.S. mint lineage coin. The reason being, if they're selling you gold eagles or silver eagles this week, it doesn't matter whether you go through a dealer or whatever, the dealer bought through the mint. So the U.S. Mint is selling you coin this week, and then can they really come back next week and say, but you have to sell it back? Now, they could certainly do that with bars. They could do that with foreign sovereigns. They could do that with generics. That would not be a problem. But the legal ramifications, the amount of time that it would take to get legislation written, lawsuits, finalized to a judgment, it would take forever if there were a confiscation and eagles, U.S. mint lineage coin being included. So you got to look at it from two different angles, one from the federal level and one from the state level. And I am encouraged on the state level because, who knows where we're going to be in a year, 5 years, 10 years. It's very possible, you've heard theories of the country breaking into, 5 different regions or 7 different regions. If that were the case and these states have legal tender laws on the books, then gold and silver are money. They are money, but recognized legally as money.
Been questions from
Right. I got one other thing to mention on that, with a big but, meaning a gold eagle has $50 on it, and a silver eagle has what, $5 on it or whatever. You would not pay your taxes, or you would not pay any bills with a 1 ounce gold coin being $50. So, there's going to have to be some type of legislation, some type of reckoning, because, okay, yeah, great, gold eagles are legal tender at $50. Nobody's selling them. Yeah, pre-33 gold is legally considered a collectible coin. So it is not bullion. So you go back to what it was, 1933, 34, when the gold was called in by Roosevelt. Those gold coins were circulating. So basically they were calling the coin back in. Today it's different because, we don't use gold or silver in our day-to-day life. And there's a difference between eagles, buffaloes, foreign sovereigns, etc. They're considered bullion, whereas the pre-33 gold is considered a collectible. You are not a hoarder, you're a coin collector. And I would say that probably goes true for non-graded coins. You could have non-graded coins from 1933 or earlier and still be considered a coin collector. On the other side with junk silver, yes, that is U.S. Mint Lineage coin, no question about it. The utility, the reason you want to own junk silver is the utility of it. When the system goes down, we're going to go through a period of 2 weeks, 2 months, God forbid, 6 months or more of a barter system. If we go through a barter system, you want the smallest denomination. So either you can make change and 14 dimes base roughly, 14 dimes equals 1 ounce. So if you went with an eagle, you would be extending him credit because he owes you another 12 dozen eggs. So now there's credit involved, and you don't want to do credit. You don't want to give credit. You don't want to take credit. When times are broken, you want to stay away from credit. And conversely, if you've got junk silver, if you've got dimes, you've got quarters, you can make change for a 1 ounce coin. So basically, it's the utility of junk silver. That's why I believe it to be the best. The downside on junk silver, and this, I'm not saying that you don't have to pay your taxes, but if you sell 1,000 eagles, there's not a reporting limit. It's not a reportable taxable event. It is a taxable event. You are responsible for it, but there's no reporting. With junk silver, if you sell $1,000 face or more, it's a reportable event. You'd have to give your social security number.
Bill Holter's warning is direct. If you're going to hold gold and silver as a lifeline against financial collapse, how you hold it matters just as much as that you hold it. U.S. Mint Lineage coins, such as American Gold Eagles, Silver Eagles, and pre-1933 coinage, offer unique legal protections that bullion bars, foreign coins, and generics simply can't. These coins are actively sold by the U.S. Mint, and as Holter points out, it becomes legally complex and politically explosive for the federal government to turn around and confiscate what it was just selling days before. Junk silver also plays a vital role, offering utility for barter in times of breakdown, small denominations for trade, without the burden of credit risk. What's more, states like Florida and Texas are beginning to codify these protections into law. Florida's recently passed HB 737 defines legal tender as specie coin having gold or silver content and minted and issued by the United States government, a clear nod to U.S. Mint Lineage. It even stipulates that qualifying coins must bear no imagery other than purity and weight markings, explicitly naming the American Gold Eagle and Silver Eagle as compliant. Texas followed suit with nearly identical language in HB 4903, signaling a broader trend among states reasserting constitutional money and rejecting the fiat status quo. These bills don't just recognize gold and silver, they legally enshrine specific forms of it, giving holders of U.S. mint coins a strong layer of legitimacy and legal clarity in the storm that's brewing. But even with strategic coin choices and state-level protections, the larger storm can't be ignored. The real battle is now unfolding on a global scale. The dollar is rapidly losing its dominance, central banks are stockpiling gold, and geopolitical shocks are accelerating an international shift away from U.S. financial control. Holter warns that these aren't isolated events. They're signals that the foundation of the current system is cracking. And when the cracks finally give way, those still clinging to fiat promises and paper wealth may find themselves locked out of the next monetary system entirely. Let's get back to Holter's interview.
What are you seeing right now in the trajectory of the dollar, and what do you think is behind it, and where do you think it's leading?
Well, obviously, the trajectory of the dollar is down. I mean, it's gone from roughly 110 to 97, and it's broken. Half of that move has been done in the last, 6, 7, 8 weeks. A move down from 104 to 97. And I think that's a function of the world using less dollars, the world making contracts in less dollars. We had strength in the dollar. I mean, it ran up to 110, and it was, that was basically a short squeeze. What you had was contracts or trade deals finalizing, and once they finalize, then what you had was foreigners having to buy dollars to satisfy that contract. So it was absolutely demand. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it was contrived demand, if you will. It was contractual demand. It was not emotional demand. It was not a desired demand. It's not like foreigners were going out buying dollars. They had to buy dollars to finalize dollar contracts. That is waning. If you look at, the talk right now is, the Federal Reserve should be cutting rates. Well, what happened the last time they cut rates? They cut rates in 2 or 3 moves, 1 full percentage point, yet market rates went up 1 full percentage point. I think Powell right now, the Federal Reserve, as a whole, I think they're in an outright panic that if they cut rates, then you're going to see another big down leg in the dollar. And I think that's the reticence of the Fed not cutting rates, because if they cut rates and all of a sudden you see the dollar tanking again and interest rates going even higher, what does that tell even the clueless? The clueless are going to know that the Federal Reserve has lost control of the yield curve. Well, the reason there's been more volatility in treasuries is because it's become a thinner market. There are less participants. And I would say just the fact that foreigners are trying to distance themselves from the dollar, those guys are not playing, if you will, market. So that liquidity is gone. Less liquidity will always equal higher volatility. I mean, that's just a simple fact. As far as the dollar never going away, I think that's completely wrong. But it's going to be difficult for it to go away, because even today, the dollar represents 50% across the board. I mean, some are higher, some are lower, but it represents 50% of central bank reserves around the world. Now, that number was well up into the 60s if you go back 10, 15 years ago. And interestingly, gold now is what? Is it 20%? Is that the number?
The Basel III, how they account for it, 15%?
No, the amount that's being held by central banks. I think the number's approaching 20%. And the thought process is, that's because all these central banks had been buying gold. And I'm going to say, yeah, only a little bit. The biggest thing is the price of gold has doubled. So if the price of gold has doubled, it's going to obviously take a bigger percentage of reserves. Now, central banks have been and they are buying. And I think it's a joke. China says they have 3,000 tons or thereabouts. I mean, you have 10 times that minimum, and you could scratch that out on the back of a napkin. I mean, you just look at their imports from 2010 on, and I mean, they've got easy 35,000 metric tons compared to the U.S. supposedly has 8,300 metric tons. And we were going to have an audit. We're going to have an audit. Where's the audit? There's not going to be an audit. They can't do an audit. I mean, if the truth comes out that the U.S. has no gold, what happens to the entire financial system worldwide? It gets smoked because the foundation to the financial system are U.S. treasuries. And when it used to be gold.
What do you see happening going forward with the BRICS Plus alliance of countries talking about gold-backed trade settlement for differences in trade on a net basis going forward? Do you see them actually making moves? And what kind of a timeline are you imagining is most likely for that to happen?
I'm not going to say a timeline, but I'm going to say whatever the timeline was a few weeks ago, that timeline is now shorter because of the Iranian, the conflict over there. It was only a week or 2 weeks prior that the rail system was completed into Tehran. And all of a sudden, boom, we end up, smoking their bunkers, whether they had stuff in it or empty or not. I mean, I have no idea. But the timeline of the BRICS moving away from dollars and completely pushing them off and not using dollars and moving to a gold-backed trade settlement system, I think that has been greatly accelerated.
What do you think are the first maybe 1, 2, or 3 things that newcomers to the sound money movement or to learning that there are risks that they maybe have not been told about to their savings and their retirement, their nest eggs? What are the first couple of things you think that they need to know that they haven't been told either by their personal financial advisors, most likely, or by the mainstream financial press?
I would say 2 things. The first thing is gold nor silver can bankrupt in a world that is extremely overlevered and in the process of bankrupting. And the second thing I would say is please read or watch The Great Taking, because that's what this game is on. That's what the end game is in the financial markets, is the Great Taking. Those laws are on the books all over the world. The ink is completely dry. These laws started to be put on the books in 2014. They are completed everywhere around the world, and the population is going to be completely fleeced.
When Bill Holter talks about the Great Taking, he's not just warning about market volatility or monetary policy. He's echoing the findings of a bombshell investigation by David Rogers Webb, an independent financier who unearthed a global financial coup so sweeping, so deliberate, and so far advanced that most people struggle to believe it's even possible. But it's not only possible, it's already underway. According to Webb, the Great Taking is the planned endgame of the century-long debt supercycle, a silent seizure of all collateral, everything. This includes not just stocks and bonds, but the underlying assets behind them: corporate property, equipment, land, mineral rights, patents, and infrastructure. It extends even further to private property, real estate, and businesses. Webb warns that the legal and financial system has already been rigged to ensure that when the collapse arrives, ownership of all collateral will be transferred quietly to a small elite under the guise of systemic necessity. This isn't a hypothetical, it's a long-planned architecture of conquest, carried out through obscure changes in custody law and the global rehypothecation framework. Through nominees like Seed and Company, most investors today are only beneficial owners of their assets, while actual legal title belongs to central clearing entities controlled by the very architects of this scheme. And the goal, Webb says, is nothing less than the greatest subjugation in human history, a debt-fueled trap where the collapse triggers mass forfeiture of property, financial assets, and even intellectual capital. Webb goes further. He ties this endgame to the private, tightly held control of central banks, asserting that a tiny handful of shadow actors, operating through intelligence agencies, media, multinational corporations, and political puppets have orchestrated this slow-motion coup over decades. Their war, he says, is not between nations or classes. It's a hybrid war against humanity itself. And as Holter emphasizes, when the final stage hits, the laws are already in place, the ink is dry, and the people won't even realize what's happening until everything is gone. That's why Holter urges immediate action. Get out of the system. Not later, now. Physical gold and silver, held in your possession, are among the last assets that remain outside the seizure matrix. They carry no counterparty risk, no third-party claim, and no exposure to the legal traps quietly embedded in today's financial structure. When the great taking becomes reality, the question will be simple. What do you still own that no one else can take? Bill Holter doesn't mince words. This is the endgame. The world is bankrupt, and the next domino to fall will be public trust in financial institutions. If you're holding paper wealth, stocks, bonds, ETFs, bank savings, Webb's research makes clear that it is already spoken for. Holter's solution? Remove yourself from the system before the curtain drops. Own physical gold and silver. Hold it directly. Because when the seizure begins, only what you can touch will remain truly yours. If you found this information valuable, do not leave without taking action. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss critical updates. Share this with someone you care about, because once the great taking begins, it will be too late to prepare. Your survival may depend on what you do now. Thanks for watching.